Well, hello and welcome to Waffle-Free Storytelling. It's Tina Konstant here, and since this has been a relatively mellow week, we've got ourselves a relatively mellow story. It's called The Baobab Tree. Now, this happened in a land where the horizons were far from each other and the distances were long. A baobab tree stood alone and watched the world. It had stood there on its own for so long that it had begun to wonder what was happening beyond the horizon, and so it spoke. So tall and wide and deep and old was that tree that the news that it had spoken crossed oceans. As you can expect, every breeze in the world made it their mission to travel to the great tree to hear what it had to say. The north wind and the southern gales travelled with as much gusto as the small valley breezes and the meadow whispers. Even the sleepy doldrums over the oceans lifted his heaving belly and crossed the sea and the land to hear the baobab speak. And as you can imagine, nothing the wind does, it does alone. Every movement it makes, it lifts sand and soil. Every gust carries seeds and pods, and every bluster is full of ice and water. And so the winds from all four corners of the world blew and blasted, gusted and billowed, each one lifting and carrying what is in its path, until they all arrived at the baobab tree. And when the wind stopped, it did what all still wind does. It dropped what it had in its arms. So the seeds and the pods, the earth and the soil, the ice and the water all fell to the ground around the base of the baobab tree. For a long time there was silence. So long, in fact, that the seeds and pods took root and sprouted so they could see what was going on. Finally, the breeze rustled and whispered, the seeds and the pods bloomed, and the wind got so impatient waiting for the great tree to speak again that the north wind burst out and said, "Speak! Tell us your story!" And the baobab tree smiled and said, "I would rather hear yours. You have travelled so much further than I." Well, that's it. Little short story from Waffle-Free Storytelling today. I think it's about just listening to what other people have to say, you know? We don't know the journeys people have been on, the roads they've taken, and sometimes when we are in our bubbles, it's very easy to forget that there is a very big and magnificent and raucous world out there that we need to listen to sometimes. So I am off to have a cup of tea. Go and do the same if you fancy, and drop around to www.tinakonstant.com for all of the waffle in the chat and more stories and all sorts of other stuff and nonsense. I look forward to seeing you there. Have a splendid and beautiful day, and that's it. See you next time. Bye-bye. Hey. Let's later, Jack.